Recording. Hey beautifuls, welcome back to the channel. Waffly. As you guys can see, Waffly is turning a bit chilly. I am wearing a new varsity jacket that I fell in love with. It's just this beautiful jacket. But I've just got off the phone with the gender clinic, and I've never ever missed an appointment in my life, and today I actually missed my appointment, and I actually thought it was for tomorrow. Turns out it was for today. We were just mainly discussing about me wanting to detransition, and they are actually concerned why there's been a disconnect, and like she says, me trying to put into words why I'm detransitioning isn't matching up, roughly, because for one, last time that she seen me, she says that I was happy, roughly, which I was extremely happy, and that I wanted to go for surgery, roughly, in that lot, but now things have started to shift and change. But like I told her, I says I woke up wanting to detransition. I says that happened one time and then it went away. I says, but then the feelings started getting stronger and stronger. I says I can't tell you how or when it started. I says I don't know. I says all I know was the feelings were just getting stronger and stronger, which for me wasn't normal because I was a completely happy person. And we was discussing what I've done to detransition, and one of them being I came off my hormones and I stopped using my blocker. Believe it or not, I had a phone call from my doctor this morning saying that my injection was due, and like I says, I don't take that anymore, lovely. So there's that, and she asked me what exactly, she says, does transition mean to you? I says I don't know anymore. Like I told her, she says, do you still like a female up here in the heat in your heart? And I says to her, I says yes, I still feel the same way that I do, and I will always be like this. But for some reason there's been a complete disconnect, and I don't know what's happened. How I felt 7-8 years ago, roughly, from being on hormones is completely different to how it is now. And she says to me, she's, are you okay being called Elena, roughly, and female? I says yes, I'm okay with that, because that technically is still who I am. But I have an appointment next month to go down this further, roughly, to find out what's going on, roughly, and why there's such a disconnect. But like I said to her, I said I don't know if you'll get anything out of me, because I don't even know. Roughly, it didn't make sense for this to come out the blue, and even my mum just says to me, she says it was out the blue. She says, and it's weird, roughly, because you've never thought about that before, which I haven't. Roughly, I haven't regretted one part of my transition, not one. But thing is, roughly, this is the reality, and she asked me, what things are you doing for your mental health? Because roughly she's booking me in because you get it free, roughly, in the gender clinic. You get free therapy sessions, and she says you might actually benefit from doing that. She says, because I know you've stopped the hormones. She says, how do you feel? I says, mentally, I says, I feel clear. I says, but it might not be down to my dysphoria. I says, I've been doing other stuff like losing weight. I went from 17 stone 50 to almost 15 stone, which is a lot of weight to lose, roughly. I've been doing red light therapy and stuff. Roughly, I've been doing that for the last couple of times. My God, do I notice the difference? Roughly, I feel better in myself. I'm going to be buying a grounding mat. I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff. Like I told her, I said, I'm just naturally healing myself. And that I says, due to trauma and everything that's happened in my life, I says, I need to fix some stuff in my life. And that so I don't know if whether it's all connected and that but thing is, roughly, they are in one sense trying to save me from making maybe like a wrong decision, but for me at the moment it feels the right decision. And roughly, I still think it's the right decision to go down. I don't think I'm making a mistake. Like I says, I will always feel the way that I do. And she says to me, she says, have you noticed any negativity roughly from when you are presenting as male? I says to her, I says, yes. About 2 months ago, which I personally think helped added to my situation and why there was such a disconnect. I do think this added to it. Me and my sister was going to a family fun day, roughly, where they have all these bouncy castles here in Nottingham. Sorry, I got an itch. But my sister and me were going to buy some clothes for my nieces and nephews, and we were in Primark. If you didn't know what Primark is, Primark's a retailer that's here where they sell loads of clothes for cheapish prices. But my niece needed the toilet and my nephew did, and I couldn't go into the male's toilets because that makes me feel dysphoric, and it still does. But yeah, I had to go into the women's toilets, and with everything that's going off in social media and stuff, with men entering a woman's toilets, I felt the most uncomfortable I have ever been in my entire life. Usually women, they're usually okay with someone like me going into a toilet because they can tell I have breasts, I present quite feminine, muffly, and my hair's grown quite a lot. Obviously it's still short, but they were talking and they won't exactly be nice to me. And like I told them, I said I have no choice but to come in here, and I had to take my niece. And the problem is, I needed the toilet as well because I had also been hoarding, so I had to let my niece and my nephew come into the women's toilets and hide in there while I quickly went to the toilet. I had no choice. It was basically a situation I had no choice but no control over, and that was the most uncomfortable situation I've ever been in. And imagine it from them women's perspectives. That's what I'm thinking, is if I was uncomfortable about that situation, imagine what it was like for a real woman. But thing is, roughly, situations sometimes change. And she says to me, she says, it sounds like even though she says you are off hormones, she says you're trying to take care of yourself, she says, and trying to get yourself better. She says, because roughly, she says, we know you've been struggling. And I've been struggling for years. It's like when I was on hormones, I looked back at my videos and I looked back at my photos, and for me, I don't see the person that I am. All I saw was a man. And the problem is, roughly, looking at my videos and stuff, I slowly started seeing the disconnect happening, but I wasn't seeing it. And then literally the feeling started and it just got stronger, roughly. But like I says to her, I says, you wrote in the letter saying that you can help me roughly with detransition. I says, what can you help with? I says, can you help with chest surgery? I says, to correct my breast. I says, what can you do? And she says, we can help with chest surgery if that's what you need. She says, so Buffy, she says, but we need to explore other things to find out what's gone off. She says, but thing is, she says this just came out of the open. She says, roughly, she says this was all new to everyone. She says, including yourself. I says, yeah. I says, I never thought this day would come, and I didn't. And she even says to me, she says, you don't look 100% like a male. She says, but you don't look like 100% of a female. She says, you don't sound like a complete male. And she says to me, she says, were you ever bullied for being the way that you are? And I says, yeah, lots of times. I says, I still get it today. Roughly, when I went out with my sister before she went on a holiday, and I looked after her house for a week, she was getting her nails done, and there was these two blokes blasting music out on this boombox or whatever it is, and they were looking at me. And back then I was still presenting as female, and roughly they were calling me freak, not a real woman, not a real man, roughly. And my sister just ignored it, and I did. But the thing is, it got to my nephew, because he was like, why are they saying that to you, Uncle Nicky? Roughly, that's not very nice. You are a man. And I says to him, I says, ignore it. And this is how it's been throughout how I was in school. I was always ridiculed and teased for not being a real man. But the thing is, it's like I've said in my videos, it's like I don't fit in as a man. Never have done. I fit in more in the female category. But with everything that's going off, I now fit in neither. And no, I'm not binary. I am not non-binary in one. No. I'm still me. I still feel like a female up here and in here. I still believe in only two genders. I don't believe there's any in between and stuff, roughly. I still believe, roughly, that men shouldn't be allowed in women's bathrooms. This is all kinds of things that I believe in. But the thing is, sometimes reality has to set in. But I don't know what the future is going to hold. Maybe I'll end up going back on hormones. I don't know. But for me, roughly, I don't think, like I told her, I says, I don't think going back on hormones, it's gonna help. It's not gonna help, because with the dissociation from the hormones, then everything in my life, and then roughly my own dysphoria and depression going on top, it became too much, and the hormones, instead of working, decided they weren't gonna work, but then added and aided on top of my depression. So where do I go from here? I don't know. But we're going to find out what the future holds. I'm going to be going into therapy and stuff to find out what's gone off. But we're having a long talk next month, June, roughly. So also the gender clinics now are sending appointments via email now, because waiting for a letter to come, it's a bit too long. So hopefully I should get an email sometimes this week. So it's a faster process, and you know what, it's better. But the thing is, literally, if we get to the bottom of it, which I don't know if we will ever get to the bottom of it, if they say, what do you want? I'll just say, what can you offer? Can you offer chest surgery to correct this? If they go yes, I'll say, well, I'll take it. Like I told her, I says, I'm still going to be living as me. Every partner I've ever had has always known who I well and truly was. And it will be exactly the same. I'm just going to live my life. And I have no choice, roughly, because for one, I don't know why there's a disconnect. Anyway, I don't know if I'm explaining myself all that very well, but then again, roughly, not even she could put it all together just like I couldn't. So we're gonna see what the future holds and see what's down the line. Anyway, stay tuned for more videos.